Welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick, and Chris Lucian is out on vacation for this recording, but that's quite all right because we're happy to have Thomas Desmond as the co-host for the show. And we are very excited to have Jeff Langr from the mob programming community join us today. It's real exciting for me because I've been following Jeff for a while on his mobbing and just tech stuff in general. I've been learning a lot, and it's great to see his work in the community. And excited about our conversations today about remote mob tech and techniques and PubMob. So to help get us started, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Austin and Thomas. Appreciate it. I'm a software developer. I've been doing this near forever, as long as I can remember. Paid to do it since 1982. And then before that, I played around in high school with stuff. So this is just a lifelong love. About midway through now, I encountered this whole thing called Agile, XP actually, specifically back in 99. So it's really hard to believe it's like 20 years now since I came upon all this stuff. And of course, that brought about pairing and whatnot. I started working remote, and I think for me, what I would love to talk about is a lot of mobbing in the context of being remote. So I started working remote around 2010 with Tim Ottinger. And then both of us got canned from that job. About a year in, they got bought out, the company. And I get on this phone call one Wednesday morning, and they're like, okay, all you remote people, you're all fired. Goodbye. Click. I mean, it was literally a 5-minute call. So that was my first experience with being remote. Around 2013. I do a lot of development. So I work with companies and help them do development. Every once in a while, I travel. A lot for that, obviously, and every once in a while, my wife's like, "Okay, take your pick, Jeff. Here's marriage, here's travel. Which one is more appealing to you?" It's like, "Okay, marriage is good. Let's stick with that." So every once in a while, I find myself working in a company where I'm just helping them build software, and I've done that a few times over the past 20 years. But the other half is consulting. So I find myself teaching a lot, as well as coaching with them in teams. And I don't remember when it was, but somewhere maybe 7-8 years ago, I decided I would start incorporating a little more collaboration in the training that I gave. Now, I've been doing pairing with the groups, and students would typically grouse about it, but I give them this little explanation like, okay, we're pairing to keep you engaged, to keep the class swimming so that we don't get people racing way ahead and people falling behind. It helps keep the class at an even keel, levels out, if you will, the development rate that they're learning things at. So I started doing that, and then I started hearing about these things called randories. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. I started incorporating a little bit more of this whole group exercise form, and this is probably around 2013 or so. I thought that's pretty effective. And then I heard about mobbing. I'm like, well, what's the difference here? Well, there's a bit of difference. I don't know exactly. Maybe you guys can tell me. But my understanding was randori was kind of more free for all, just throw things at the pair up front and let a pair up front develop, and mobbing has just a bit more structure to it. And so once I discovered that, I decided, well, let's just go whole hog with this. So when I do training, if it's a small enough group of folk, I'll introduce mobbing. And then when I'm coaching teams at customer sites, we'll do some mobbing. So that takes me today. I'm actually working with a couple different customers. One of them pretty much 4 days a week for the past since January, really. And since COVID started, it has been pretty much my full-time gig. And then interspersed, I'll go out and work with a different company where I'm doing a mixture of training and then some coaching with the teams. But yeah, day to day, I'm just using mobbing for work I'm doing with my customers. So that kind of takes us to today.
Nice. Fantastic. Cool. Well, one of our topics was remote mobbing tech and techniques. What's in your tool belt today?
All right. Well, so I think the first thought I had coming to mind around remote and mobbing with the current customer, they're located in Detroit area. I'm in Colorado. So I would be traveling out there, and I've been with this customer for about a year now in this current gig and worked with them before. I was traveling out maybe twice a month. And then in January, I decided I'm working with some teams. I've been working sporadically with some teams and doing a little bit of mobbing. January, I switched to a couple new teams. And I immediately said, well, let's get you in a room. Let's find a nice little room at your company building and find a space to sit in all as one team, get in front of a big monitor. And I taught them a little bit about mobbing. So we've been doing with basically these two teams since January. And then March comes, and what happens in March? Everybody go home. Goodbye. Well, we don't need you here. Leave the building, go back to your individual offices and figure out how to work things. So what was interesting is, first off, I don't remember hearing any kind of discussion around what the expectations were in terms of working from home. It's just go figure it out. And I got to imagine most companies are like that, right? So I think what was fascinating for me is in January, we did mobbing for, basically 2 months before COVID hit. And the teams are like, okay, this is a lot of fun. This is something we don't mind doing. We're getting a lot of kick out of it, and probably enjoying a good deal more than pairing. We had been doing pairing here and there before, and they had been doing it, and reactions to that were like, I don't know if I really want to do that. So I think the fascinating thing is COVID hit. Day one, I get with them on the phone on a Zoom call, and they're like, they're all depressed. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with the COVID? I hope this only lasts for a few weeks, blah, blah, blah. So the reaction was not good, as you can imagine. So day one was maybe not a hot day. Day two, we're just like back in mobbing, and it was almost like there was no blip. They came back at the end of the day, said, we're still having a good time, which that to me kind of says the testament of the power of working in collaborative groups.
Yeah. So I guess my first question is, what tools did you guys end up using that worked so well so quickly? What tools or techniques in a remote setting that just seemed to work for this context?
Right. So when I started with the team back in January, we were all in the rooms, two teams. I was bouncing between two teams. Mostly I'm working with one team now. We were in one room, and we had a big old monitor in front of us, and we used Mobster, and we just shared the keyboard and bounced around, and that seemed to be fine. We quickly, when we got to being remote, quickly realized that Mobster is not such a hot tool to manage this thing. And I had been reading a bit about a tool called Mob. You probably know, I think it's Simon who helped build it. And it's a Git handover tool. And I had started playing with it, and I thought, well, this is fantastic because it really gives me the best of my world when I'm dealing with a remote group. I get to use my machine, my IDE, my keyboard shortcuts, and I don't have this little bit of lag that you experience when you are remote desktoping into someone else's screen, like you'll see, with VNC or even Zoom screen share. Remote control, great, but you get this weird little quarter-second lag every time you type a character. It's just unsettling, and after a full day of it, it's like, ooh, I don't think I want to do that anymore. After an hour of it, I'm done with it. So yeah, with the Git handler, the cool thing is you just work on your own machine, and then you use a little script basically that says push everything up to a work in progress branch, and then the next person pulls it down. The handovers, we very quickly got to the point where the handover is like, okay, this is easy. It's about a 5 to 10 second handover. Share the screen, do a mob start, and give it the number of minutes you want to mob for. When the timer's up, it just says mob done or mob next. You type in mob next, and it just goes to the next person. So that's really cool. Basically, it allows the tool to quickly get out of the way. It's not usually a problem. It's just a wraparound Git commands too. So if you get into troubles, like you forget to do something like a mob next, you can manage getting back in the right state by just issuing good old Git commands. So that seems to work really well. I've had quibbles with others. I've done plenty of them. When I was doing my first remote gig back in 2010, we basically did remote screen control, and it just wasn't nearly as enjoyable. And it leads to no end of dysfunctions, like one person pretty much dominating for a while because the other person wants, I'm usually like this, hands back. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do a lot of remote control just because it's no fun.
Mm. Cool.
Yeah, I get into quibbles. So, done some mobbing with folks. Llewellyn Falco has a really wonderful setup. He uses, I think, AnyDesk. And instead of remoting into each other's machine, you get at least a performance boost there, a network boost there, I suppose. So it seemed a lot more effective when I was doing that. What was interesting, we still had some problems there's always one person who has troubles, whether using the mob tool. It's like, oh, shoot, well, we got to get them onto the GitHub repo. So that takes a few minutes, or for whatever reason, having trouble pushing or whatever. So there's always a tooling issue with remote. And I think we all know that every day there's something wonky with being remote. And we had some of the same things using the AnyDesk and remoting into that too. There were some one or two people that had some problems. So no matter what, you're going to end up with problems. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different options. I ended up writing an article about it out there somewhere, basically on my site, I guess. But I kind of categorized into 6 different ways of doing something, starting from, hey, use screen share, I'll watch and fall asleep. That's level 1. All the way to the get handover. And of course, the remote control is another option. But I think one thing that I kind of see is starting to become pretty big is cloud IDEs. I don't know if any of you ever used one. What is your experience with cloud IDEs?
Yeah, Thomas, have you tried one of these? I have a little bit. So I have a little bit of experience I can share. About you, Thomas?
I actually have not. I've heard of it, of people using either some EC2 instances or something, but I actually don't have any experience myself. So maybe Austin has something to share.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole EC2 thing that Llewellyn does, we're going to have an upcoming episode on that, by the way. So that'll be coming out, looks like sometime next year, but in 2021. But the whole cloud IDE is fascinating. I think we did a learning session with it once, and we tried a handful of them. I don't remember the names of them, but all of them had the serious lag.
Really?
And so we gave up pretty quickly. We have been doing the AnyDesk thing,
Okay.
and what's funny is, you know how working in just one context is, and you think it works everywhere. What we've realized recently is the place where the machine, the mob station, so to speak, is that everyone's remoting into via AnyDesk, that had phenomenal internet upload and download. And so even people who are all the way across the world had a great experience. But then we started to hear stories of other people who were having issues with AnyDesk. And we're like, oh, I wonder what the problem is. You know, we're not having any issues. And then it's because that upload time typically is what I've seen it to be. So the mob station internet has been more flaky lately, and we notice it. And sometimes AnyDesk is terrible because it's just not fast enough to make it a seamless experience. And I know what you're talking about, where like a little bit of lag is tolerable, but then once it reaches a certain point, it's like, what's even the point? And I think that was kind of our experience with a couple of cloud IDEs, is that we tried them, and then quickly we were like, this doesn't seem to be fast enough, so we gave up. But have you tried any, Jeff? Yeah.
Just dabble with them, nothing serious, nothing with like real teams, just on my own and playing with another person. Yeah, there's another mechanism too that is basically file sharing. So you've got Visual Studio Code and does this, and there's a product I know of called FluBits, and basically just synchronizes files between the IDEs. FluBits is kind of cool because it allows you to work in either the 2 real editors, Vim and Emacs, but you can also work in not Visual Studio Code. Atom, I think, is one of them, and then IntelliJ IDEA is also supported, which means everybody can be in their own IDE out of those 4. And it's just, since it's using a file syncing mechanism, then it doesn't matter, that everybody's using something a little different. Visual Studio Code is the same thing, but I think with that, you can only talk to other Visual Studio Code instances. And I kind of refuse to use it just because it's a really nice editor, but the refactoring support is for beans. So yeah, I can't do that. So that's, the file sharing is cool, but we found some similar issues. I was pairing with a gentleman in Germany with some one-on-one stuff, and we decided we can give this a go for about a 3-hour session. And about 2 or 3 times we'd be sitting and watching and waiting. It's like, okay, where's the sync? And it was literally 1 to 2 minutes in a couple cases. In the third case, it never worked until we restarted the IDEs. So there's always some kind of little blips I'm finding with things. As far as the cloud ones, haven't really done much with those, but I just got to think that's where people are going to want to head over the next few years. So you've got Cloud9. I still have yet to meet a company or a team that's been using any of these. And if you search around, there are dozens of the cloud IDEs out there, a lot of lesser known ones. I was really surprised when I dug around for them.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of promise, and I think it's just refining it so it's more of a seamless experience. And I think maybe it's out there already. We just haven't tried that one. But yeah, I think it's a great goal, because I mean that's the ideal, right? You want your setup time to be 0, right? You just all remote into one thing, and then boom, you're off and running, right? And so,
I think that's what you predicate your decision off of, which is what's the context? Well, I'm working with the development team and we've been working together for a while. So everybody has GitHub access. Everybody's got their IDE configured anyway to be able to run all this stuff. And it's going to be this way from now on. So it makes sense to take the time. And at that point, you may as well use the Git handover mechanism, because once you set things up once, it doesn't really cause a whole lot of troubles other than that. However, I'm doing this weekly PubMob thing, which is an open forum, and I can talk about that a bit. It's an open forum where we get a number. Anybody who wants to come is welcome, and it's free and everything. And we just work on coding. But we're finding that to get the Git handover going, we have to set up a few things. First off, they have to be added to the repo so they have permissions to write. So that's one little thing. And I can do some of this ahead of time. But invariably, there's a little bit of trouble getting things to set up or getting them to build on their machine. And that becomes a sticking point at times as well. What's kind of cool, though, is it forces the issue. I mean, if you go through a PubMob session, you're going to have this stuff on your own machine. You're going to be able to work with it after you leave the session and play with things on your own. Whereas if you're remoting in, typically, if someone's setting up an AnyDesk, they're going to have all this stuff set up, which is great, but you don't have the take home, right? I try to do this on my own. I'm like, oh, I'm stuck. It would be sure nice to have a mob help me through this.
Yeah.
So they're trade-offs. It's always a trade-off. What are you really looking for? So yeah, the downside in a PubMob setting is we do spend a little more time on config and setup. Sometimes we'll just do a little Zoom breakout room and resolve things, but it can be a headache from time to time.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. So I almost feel like on previous episodes, we talked about exponential backoff as like a remote mobbing pattern where if the internet's great, use all the tools. And if it's bad, you start backing off to like no video and just audio. And then if it gets that bad, no audio, and you're just sending messages to other people in the mob. But I almost feel like there's a tool version of that, right? Like you have your tool of choice, whether it's like AnyDesk or, Git handover tool. And if everything's working great, you can do that. And what we've noticed is when our tool of choice doesn't work, the back off for us lately has been go down to one driver and share your screen. And then it's just like the facilitator driver mode, kind of thing. And that typically always works well until internet gets better or something like that. But
yeah, exactly. And the same thing applies to teaching and presentations. You always have to have something there in case your primary preferred method crashes. And so I've told folks doing the AnyDesk things like, be prepared to go fall back. Or the people doing the Git handover, I say, if someone's having problems, give them 5 minutes. We will do the mob round and give them 5 minutes. If they're still having problems, maybe have a breakout room if you can do that, and then come around again if they're not quite set up. Let's have them fall back to remote control, and that's easy enough. So as long as you have some kind of fallback mechanism. Internet goes out, that's a different story. Or the other week, that story has nothing to do with mobbing. I was teaching a class. We were mobbing. We were using breakout rooms. So maybe it has a little bit to do with mobbing. But my machine was pigging out, and I said, I think I need to reboot. So go off, work on your exercise, about a half-hour exercise. I reboot, and my Mac's not coming up in a timely fashion. It was taking literally minutes to open any windows. I'm like, okay, that's not good. Reboot again. And of course, now I'm starting to get a little panicky because the second time it still wasn't working. So now I'm going and looking for a backup machine that I can try because, okay, what's going wrong with this machine? What else was I looking? I was looking at a few other alternatives about what I was going to do with this group. I'm trying to get on my phone into Zoom on the phone and at least talk them through things on the phone. All these things are spinning through my head. It's like, oh man, worst case, I'll lose a few hours and just have to reschedule training. So that's the ultimate backup. The third time I boot and it's like, it works. So the funny part is I get back into the Zoom session and the class is like, no, how are you doing? I mean, they didn't notice. They were still working on their exercise. That's the beauty of mobbing exercises. They're helping each other. They didn't need me. That's kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, I second the backup device. So that's something I've had is I have 2 laptops. And so at any time, if one of them goes down, Like there's one in particular, if I nudge the dock cable a little too hard, poof, it like freezes and blue screens, right?
Oh, wow.
And so, but but then I just spin open my other laptop if it's like an important meeting or session or whatever, and then I'm joining on that one until the other one's coming up and running. And I've even seen people do that with phones. They'll like join on a phone for temporarily. And so I think having a backup device that can at least join the Zoom or the call or whatever, so you can interact in some way is typically been a good thing.
So if you do that, you have to make sure you keep it up to snuff, because I pulled this other machine and it's like a 2013 MacBook, and I go to pull up my slide deck, which is in Keynote. My machine doesn't have Keynote. Wait a minute, that can't be true. So I guess I've been using LibreOffice or OpenOffice before that. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go get Keynote. That'll only take a minute. Well, you can't download Keynote to this machine because your Mac has to be updated. I'm like, okay, now I'm screwed here. That's, we're talking an hour or two out, and that's going to kill the day. So I put the laptop down. I'm like, that's when I said, let's try the third boot.
Yeah.
Hope to gosh it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no matter what, I mean, I don't think I've ever had things totally fail on me. And one more thing I'll mention about the mobbing tools. This relates also to the having a backup thing. James Grenning, who you guys just had on, that was a fun little episode about the zombies. James asked me to help co-present some TDD stuff at a conference a few years ago. He likes to use Cyber Dojo. Yeah. Which is a really, really bare bones editor in a collaborative environment. And it's really cool because you can kind of watch people's red, green refactor rhythms. So he basically has everybody get onto this during the session. And I think the general rule of conferences and networks, don't depend on it. Bad news. So sure enough, midway through this thing, the thing just crashes. Boom. Like, nope, we're done. We found a way to end the whole conference presentation, but yeah, no matter what, you got to be able to fall back to something.
Yep.
Have a whiteboard in your pocket and pull it out and start whiteboarding if you have to. It doesn't work too well with code.
Nice. All right. Well, maybe we'll transition to the next topic, but Thomas, did you have any questions on remote mobbing techniques or tech before we go to the next topic?
No, I think I'm ready for PubMob. I was interested in kind of what kind of topics are covered inside of that PubMob weekly.
Sure. So just a bit of history on that. COVID started, and I think one of the big challenges of COVID is I find it even still a little depressing, from time to time, in a real sense, not in just like, okay, I'm just not liking this. I'm finding it is leading me toward a kind of a depressive state. So I thought I need to find a way to make sure I stay engaged with the community and just keep in touch with folks. And one way to do that, the nice thing about my current customers, I have Fridays to myself to work on my business and keep things up to snuff. So I just decided I would start a weekly forum, a public mob session, hence PubMob. So there's a hashtag. I've changed the hashtag, and then basically because I created a little money venture around the whole concept. Hashtag Open PubMob US, and there's a hashtag Open PubMob UK, headed by Tom Arist right now. But yeah, the idea is just whoever wants to show up can show up, and we're just going to work on coding whatever. So the first couple of sessions, starting back like I think the second week of April after COVID hit, first couple of sessions were let's just do some simple katas, one that I was willing to guide along. And then Steve Turley brought in this wonderful kata about stock trading and stuff, just this really nasty algorithm. It's a refactoring kata. So I'm figuring, okay, we'll work on this for maybe 2 or 3 sessions. Ooh, we just finished it like about a month and a half ago. So it was like a 6-month-long kata. And we just bent every possible bit of code in this thing. I mean, half of every session was, what in the heck is this code doing? So it was pretty entertaining. We did that with approvals testing initially, and then we kind of shifted into a little bit of test-driven development. So it's a lot of fun. Recently, so my other goal with this thing was, so the first goal was to get people a community to come to get together and just have a good time learning how to code and learning how to do things and learning how to mob. So let's help. So one of my goals was to figure more effective ways to work remotely. I think mobbing is a fantastic way. So I figured let's center around mobbing, but let's figure out how to do this all effectively. So we've tried a bunch of different things. Llewellyn came in and did the AnyDesk stuff for a while, and that was kind of cool. The other thought is, as a community focusing on mobbing, I think it would be nice to have better tools. So we've been using Simon's mob tool, which is really nice. And I helped a little back and forth with him to say, based off of what we're learning in this little forum, let's tweak the tool a bit. He's loving it. He's taking right to heart and building things in the tool and giving me pushback on some things and others. So that tool is getting a little better. But I think it would be nice to have some other tools. So one of the things Simon said, mob is really intended to do one thing, which is to help facilitate the get handover. The speaker that says mob next when it's somebody else's turn is almost he's like, that's not a primary thing. He didn't want to focus a lot on improving that. And it's got a few little warts that you have to deal with. For one, installing onto Windows doesn't have a native speak command or say command. So you got to figure out how you're going to make it talk. And there's some nice, easy ways to do it, but it's just more work than, just dropping in a Choco install or whatever it is. Choco install. You say Choco or Choco?
I've heard Choco.
Choco. I think it's chocolatey is the tool, yeah. Right? So for whatever reason, the timer stuff is a little deficient. So one thought is we should be building better tools. And one of the things I want to head to is a better timer tool, maybe a command line timer that hooks up with the command line mob tool, kind of pipes into it somehow. So that's one thought. We actually haven't settled in things, but meanwhile, everybody's like, well, what language? Well, I don't know. Let's survey a few languages. So we've gone through Go, which universally nobody thought was terribly interesting, and in some ways almost offensive to me. Tries to be a little too, what's the word? Opinionated, very opinionated. And in ways I don't like your opinion. So we kind of did Go for a week or so, and then we're on to Rust right now, which is kind of cool. And we're digging a little deeper into Rust to kind of ferret out the limits of this thing. I'm hoping we look at Elixir because that's a language I'm trying to come up on to speed as well. So we'll look at another language or two and then hopefully launch into, let's make this into a collaborative tool building forum, PubMob.
That's fantastic. That's very, very exciting. Well, two things jump out to me. One is the whole time I've been reading PubMob as like a pub you go to get at drinks. And so
as well. Yeah.
No, I didn't mention alcohol at all. So about that. So all right. Now, just a brief pitch. I know you said wait till the end, but I'm doing a venture called PubMob.com, which after doing PubMob for a while, I never had this intent in the first place to say, well, let me do the PubMob to make money. No, it was just to create a community. But, my wife's like, I've been actually trying to do remote as a full-time thing since last November, shift my company from having to travel on site to Detroit and St. Louis and wherever else to trying to find a way to do more and more remotely. And with both of my current customers, I had done a bit of that here and there, but it would be really nice to never have to get on a plane again. All right, so COVID hits and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I've already touched base with some of my customers and said, well, what are your interests with remote? Are there things that you've had to pay money for in the past to help you with? Can I do some of these remote and so on? So I'm trying to build up more customers at the same time as well. And my wife can tell my frustration. So a couple of weeks after COVID she says, go take the dog for a walk, go take Luna for a walk. So I go for a walk. I'm like, well, duh, the PubMob thing is sitting right, smacking me in the face. And so I thought, okay, what an idea to have just a bunch of people with well-known names. So if you go to PubMob.com, you'll find Amitai's there, Amitai Schleier, Llewellyn's there, Emily Bache is there, James Grenning's there, Jon Reid's there, and a few other well-known people are there, JB Rainsberger. So the idea is put some well-known people out there and just give them a forum to do whatever they want in a short 75-minute session. The PubMob weekly sessions are designed to be short, 75 minutes. We did them for 2 hours for a while. It tended to go a little long in the tooth. 75 minutes is kind of just enough to get really excited, and then everybody disappears. So trade-offs again.
Yeah, so you have these people on, is it, so once a week you say? Is it weekly?
Yeah, right now I've been doing Fridays, and then I bought a cabin to also get away from COVID. So every Friday I go out into the middle of nowhere, and I initially was doing the sessions Friday morning, and then I realized the best I can do is satellite internet out at the cabin. So I'm paying for that, but doesn't quite cut it for a Zoom chat. So decided I needed to move things. And at that point, we were having larger groups, like around 8 or 9 folk. So I figured this was a big good point to split it. I run them now Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. So that picks up, anybody Eastern Time might feel it's a little late. but I think it kind of works. With the Fridays, we were picking up some folks in India, but it was really late for them. So one of them moved on Tuesdays. When I moved to Tuesday, we were able to pick him up Tuesday night for us, Monday morning for him. So the nice thing is now there's also the UK one. Tom Arist has taken that, and I think he runs it just a little earlier on Fridays, so that he's not making people, I had at least a couple gentlemen that were saying, my wife's not so happy because it's 8 p.m. Friday and I'm still playing with the computer. Like, okay. So Tom moved it early to help those folks out. I think they were in like Finland was one and Latvia is another. So
I think
that's the other thing. The cool thing about the PubMob venture is the idea is you can start to reach people, because you think about it, I'm putting up little sessions for 75 minutes. I can do it at 11 p.m. at night and pick people up in Asia without any, effort on their part to find the time for it. During their day, they don't have to stay up real late. So
that's
flexibility.
What I love about this is every once in a while we get, hey, I would love to try mobbing. And it's in the past, it's kind of been like, oh, let me look around and talk to people and see who's going to do some kind of like open mobbing soon. And it's just fantastic that there is a weekly session in 2 different parts of the world where anybody can come try it out. And I think that's just fantastic. Yeah, I think that's really, really a beneficial thing for the community. So thank you for doing that. I think that's
sure. I mean, it's the only thing is I just have to make sure I find the time, and I just made sure I was going to have that availability each week. I think I've only missed it once, and another time I set it up and I had to go do something, but I've stuck to it. I would love to see more participation from the community. I think there's a lot to be picked up from it, just to see this and feel it and experience it, to understand this is a way we could do remote with a lot more humanity. I think that's something that's really important to me. To me, being told to go home at COVID and just stick it out in an office and get on a few meetings during the day, I don't think that's effective. To me, this is the way to work when you're remote. I did the remote 10 years ago in 2010, and I thought that wasn't bad because we were pairing, but it had a lot of little frustrations. So I think with mobbing, it's so cool. I hear 2 things all the time still. The same things I had been hearing for the past few years. And the first one is we're having a lot of fun. So people find this engaging. They're sticking with it because they're having a blast. 2 is we're going faster, which I always found amazing. Not everybody says that all the time, but I hear that still fairly frequently. And I'm always like, really? You're going faster. Everybody's in the room working on just one thing at a time and you're going faster. Huh, why is that? So I did start chewing on that for the past few years, and I came up with a really long laundry list of part of the reasons why you go faster. So that's kind of my challenge for people, is think about why would it speed us up?
Yeah, it is hard to believe, but once you experience the speed up, you're like, it's so addicting. I don't know if I could go back. Yeah, it's just the no queuing and no waiting and just get it done and get it out. It's so fun. I'm looking now at your website, and wow, you guys have a great lineup of PubMob session leads. So that is super cool. And so I guess I'm seeing that some of them are paid and then some of them are not. Am I reading that right?
Where'd you get that sense? I think they're all paid. So it's basically you put down a credit card, you pay for a session, and it's designed.
Oh, okay.
You can also get a private session through a company, but it's designed to be, it's not cheap, but it's not expensive either. So if you're at all into development, I think you'll find that just sitting with people that know their stuff for an hour is going to be a very effective way of learning things. And then basically you having to help explain things as you go through that hour will help bolster what you learn. But yeah, it's we're looking for more people. I'm just looking for people with any kind of recognition out there that can help bring in their own folks. So certainly there's openings for people who are interested in offering their own sessions there. And I don't really view this as a big moneymaker for me. It's not, I don't think it's the main reason I did this. We're not charging enough for one to make a lot of money. And, if I'm running a couple sessions a month, I might make a few hundred extra bucks. But I think really it's more to help other folks like myself, independent consultants, kind of have a springboard into perhaps more business for themselves. So there's this whole notion of, hey, it takes me 6 months to land a customer because they don't know me from Adam. They got to go to all these approvals and hoops if they're going to spend decent money to get me to come out to coach or teach a class. With this, it's like, is this person worth their snuff? You know what? I'll spend a little bit of money, tiny bit of money, and jump on with them for an hour and just see how do they teach things and what are they going to help me with? Are they going to be able to help me solve my problem? So it's a try you before they buy you kind of a mentality.
That's super cool. So I mean, I think maybe that's the call to action to our users is if because mobbing is such a great way to teach and learn, right? And so I think it's really cool to have a forum where that's the way it's going to be done that way, right? You can pick your person, you can pick your topic, and be delivered in a way where you get to interact and do it, right? And you get to try it out. And I think that's really admirable. So I'm really excited about this to learn more about it. Thomas, did you have any more questions on PubMob?
No, I think I just would second that the mobbing really is a great way for teaching. It helps the students and helps the instructor, I think, being able to teach in a mobbing style.
Yeah, I wouldn't dream of doing a training session anymore without some kind of collaboration. And it's just the whole this is teaching from the back of the room, I think, has similar concepts. Let them teach each other. Absolutely. And particularly with remote. So you think about a training class where you're teaching programming, you really need to see what they're doing in the code and start saying, well, okay, you're kind of missing out on this concept and that concept. And when live, you get to go around and wander behind each screen. And I would always have it paired so I didn't have to go to twice as many screens at least. So you get to wander behind and talk about things for a few seconds with each. With the mobbing, first off, you've got, I just did a class a couple of weeks ago with 10 people, and then we divvied them up into 3 mobs. So I was just using the Zoom breakout rooms and bouncing from mob to mob to mob. And in general, they were able to help each other. Whereas you think about breaking out into smaller groups, you've got more potentials for problems and people getting stuck. And in a classroom, they might speak up. They might just silently suffer for a while. Even a pair is a little reluctant to speak up. So with the mob, you're starting to also have them help each other with the problems a little more quickly than I can get to them. So that too helps. So I wouldn't even consider it anymore. If I can break up a training into mobs, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I can't imagine taking 10 people and then individually looking at their screens and checking on their code. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, let them teach each other. Yeah.
And then you also don't have the laggards, which, new people learning the language at the same time you're teaching them something. That's almost every TDD class I've taught has had one person who doesn't know the language we're going in. And with the pairing or mobbing, it actually doesn't matter a whole lot. So you don't have the laggards, and then you don't have the people who are just like, oh, I already know all this, done. Oh, what am I going to do? Okay, now I'm going to pester the instructor, or, all that stuff disappears.
Yeah. And I think some people are okay with it, but it really energizes some people. So Matt, if you're listening, shout out to Matt. He's currently in the mob I'm working with, but he was in Thomas's class because Thomas did mobbing in a college classroom setting. Mm-hmm. And from what I heard, he was so excited by the mobbing idea. He would just come talk to Thomas afterwards and ask questions about it. And so I think it really draws out some excited people about the topic or about mobbing, and it just leads to some great opportunities. And I think I have one more follow-up question for you, Jeff, on the PubMob. So if I wanted to host a class on PubMob, what kind of comes ready to go? Like, is it basically like the tools to mob? So the instructor doesn't really have to think about that as much. What's kind of in the package deal, so to speak?
Yeah. So basically, we kind of assume everybody's going to want to do their own thing. And if you haven't been doing anything, we just say, go with the Git handover. So, you're going to have to do a little bit of setup to set up your GitHub environment to support that. Let's make it easy for people to join into the repository and push up changes because that's critical to making it work. But otherwise, we kind of leave it up to whoever is facilitating. So Emily Beisch and Llewellyn both want to do AnyDesk, and I'm like, that's fine. James Grenning wants to do the Cyber Dojo, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I do want people to be comfortable, and there's a balance. Some people don't want to have to do any setup, But I think most people will find once they do the setup of getting get handover stuff working, it's far more enjoyable because they're working in their own environment. It's just, the problem is you can never trust that people do all the setup work before they get to the class. Like, okay, you didn't do what I said. That's fine. We'll work through it.
Yeah.
And we can usually get them up quickly. But I'm going to say one thing was the downside is almost every session we did blow 15 minutes typically with some kind of problems we were dealing with. And I mean, I think part of that's reality.
Yep. I feel like Hence said every remote thing ever.
Yes. Yeah, bingo. I did want to ask about something or mention something you just touched on. You said something about excited people get into mobbing and so on, or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
So the question, the open question is mobbing for everybody? And I think certainly no, just like pairing not for everybody. The always old rule of thumb would be, out of 20 people, one person's going to detest the idea from the outset. Most of them are going to be rather maybe skeptical of the idea. But if you do it well, and obviously there's lots of ways to do both mobbing and pairing poorly, if you do it well, you come back and you find out of those 20, I'm going to say about 80, 90% are like, okay, I'm willing to do this. Either I enjoy it or I'm willing to do it because I kind of see a lot of benefits coming out of it. And you're still going to get some people who's like, oh, I hate this. It's a stupid idea. That's pairing. Mobbing's interesting. So pairing's got this legacy of 20 years of people like, oh, it's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would I want to do that? That's not why I signed up for this job. Mobbing. So I would walk up to people and maybe start talking about pairing. You can see their look. It's like this whole terror comes over their face. It's like, don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Stupid idea. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So that's a reaction. I still get that reaction to pairing more often than not. What's fascinating about the mobbing, and you tell me if your experiences are the same, I'll walk up to somebody and just say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get everybody in a room. And we're going to have a driver. And that driver is going to be in a seat for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. And the rest of the group's going to tell them what to do. So they don't have to have the ideas, reduces stress a little bit. You're not in this hot seat. You're just listening and translating. And what's fascinating is the reactions like, that kind of sounds like fun. I don't get this horrible reaction like, oh, this is a horrible idea. Why would I put everybody in the room? Which seems nuts to me. And yet it seems to make people happy. I can guarantee if you talk to people who paired over the past 20 years, probably a solid majority of them think it's just not fun, not something that they want to do. And I'll say of mobbing, I think the exact opposite is true. Far more people enjoy this than don't. I've encountered maybe a couple people who went through doing this for a while and was like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with this. So what's your experience been there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think you're right. I mean, so pairing feels more high pressure, right? Like we've talked about it a couple of times in the show. It's like pairing feels more like going on a date where but when you're mobbing, it's more like a group hangout, right? Kind of thing, right? And so I feel like there's less pressure, there's less worried about like, okay, what does the other person think of me? Because it's kind of like we're all. I feel like once there's more than two, there's this kind of like group dynamic that forms where it's just like the comfort level just comes much easier. And I think the same thing as you were saying before. Anybody who's had a positive mobbing experience where I feel like someone who's done it before is in the mob and can kind of help avoid like the obvious or the really bad pitfalls. Most of the time they come away really excited. They may not go do mobbing, but it was a positive experience for them, typically from what I've seen. And I'm having trouble to define it. Maybe you can help me out, Thomas. But yeah, I've definitely seen what you're talking about, where there's a dramatic difference between pairing with someone and mobbing. But yeah.
And something I might add is, and you kind of touched on it, there's a little bit more structure behind mobbing in that driver navigator paradigm, where you can, when you're at the keyboard, you don't have to be stressed out. You're just the input device, and other people have to be able to explain their ideas. Where I think that structure, the driver navigator experience, might not be seen in pairing as much.
Yeah, not as much. And I know Llewellyn calls that, strong style pairing. I've kind of changed it to refer to strong style navigation. But yeah, you're right. I don't think you see that very typically in the pairs, even though that was recommended many years. He came up with that many years ago. My phrase, I think I'm trying to come up with a little clever catchphrase, and I think it's the safety of the crowd versus the intimacy of a marriage. You really have to work hard to keep that marriage going. There's just so many. I think the other thing is there's so many dysfunctions with pairing that you start getting domination going on, particularly if you're not doing strong style. You get blind leading the blind. So two novices pair with each other. Well, what do you do with that? You get personality mixes. You have to ferret out the personality of everybody you're working with. So there's a lot of overhead to doing this well. And to do it well, you get pair marriages where some organizations, they don't switch very often. And then you realize that it's like, I'm kind of tired of this person after dealing with them all day. So there's all these little dysfunctions that you can have with pairing. And I think the dynamic of a crowd, as you had suggested, or group with mobbing helps us get rid of some of those dysfunctions.
I mean, I think there's two other things that jump out to me. One is with a mob, if there is a dysfunction going on, like if there's a driver navigator happening, the third person, it's easier for them to see the dysfunction because they're not actively, navigating or driving at that moment, right? And it's easier, especially I've noticed in a group, it's easier to raise an issue to be like, hey, if there's only two people and you raise an issue, you're like basically saying the other person's the issue, right? it can come across that way. Where if it's kind of like, hey, I've noticed that navigation time hasn't been equal in the mob, you know what I mean? How can we work on that or something like that? So I think it's easier to inspect and adapt because there's more opportunity for it. And I think the second piece is autonomy. There's more freedom in a mob, right? So if I'm not actively driving or navigating, I could be looking at the screen and saying like, okay, I'm going to be help looking for code smells or something like that. I also could be like, oh, okay, they're working on this, but I just had an idea and I think it'll save us a lot of time for what we're working on. And you just research it and then you bring it to the mob, right? And so there's that kind of unchained freedom to enter in and out of the mob, either literally like leave the meeting, or you're still in the meeting, but you're contributing in a way that's not driving or navigating, right? And so I think there's that freedom to do something other than drive or navigate. So yeah.
Yeah, there's that natural flow, and just, I mean, there's so many things with pairing. There's a lot of what I'll call organizational overhead, management overhead. Mm-hmm. Who's pairing with who and when, who won't pair with who because they hate them and so on. I don't think it has a very natural flow to it. And then there's no end of other things that come out of it, like the fact that you can get into merge hell with it. You break a team into subgroups, you got more than one thing in process, you've got opportunities to step on each other's throat. I just saw this. We split into sub mobs about 5 months ago, and we blew a whole afternoon in merge hell. So yeah. Yes. And I could go on, but I really don't promote pairing much anymore because mobbing seems to be a much better way. And pairing and a team of two. If I got a team of two, pairing is a mob of two. Well, no, it's not, because if you have more than that people in the group, it's really subdividing work instead of a whip of one. So that, to me, it's a big difference in the two.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Most products are complex enough that it needs more than two to get all the way to prod, right? And so then you have all the queuing and the waiting again, even though you're pairing, right? And so if you just have everyone who needs to be there is there, you can get it all the way done right now, Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we are coming up on time. Yes. So is there anything else you'd like to plug or share? We've already hit PubMob, and I'm just going to say, I'm looking through the topics of what's coming up. There's a lot of fantastic topics coming up for PubMob. So yeah, go on there, check it out. There's some great sessions coming up. So I'm really, great stuff.
We haven't sold a pile yet. Just starting to get people out into some sessions. We've got a few people who are selling sessions and a few who aren't yet. But all the feedback's been really positive. People are kind of getting light bulbs turning on as they sit through this. And the general comment is, wow, that went fast. I had a really good time. And that, to me, I think it's more about the experience than anything. And think of just the ability to sit in a small forum. We limit the sessions to 6 mobbers, and you're able to sit with some experts out there who really know the stuff. So if you want to learn about approvals testing, go join in on one of Llewellyn's or Emily Bache's sessions. If you want to learn about TDD, I've written piles of books on it. Come join one of my sessions. So, cool opportunity. I hope to grow it, get some more recognizable names in there. I also want to grow it outside of Agile. I think most of the names are pretty Agile-ful, well known in the Agile community. So I would love to grow to beyond that.
Yeah.
My intent is this could be something like, it is a far better way to learn. I'm going to echo that, Thomas. I want to basically be bigger than Udemy at some point in the future. Not to be big, but I think people will do much better with ways like this to learn things out there.
Yeah, I mean, I just done the 8-hour course on whatever in one of those sites, and I'm not sure if I could do anything with it. I have some familiarity, right? But yeah.
Yeah, they're not bad. But
Yeah.
It's a video, and the actual number of people that will actually slog their way through a video course is pretty low, as I've seen some good numbers on that. They'll start them, but.
Except Thomas's Thinkster course, of course, as well.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. Drop a link.
Yeah. All right. Well,
awesome. I will plug that.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, please like and subscribe. Please share this with anybody who you think might, gain a lot from learning some mobbing techniques, hearing about PubMob and hearing about pairing versus mobbing. And if you think this really helps somebody, please share it with them. Like and subscribe. And until next time, mob well and have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks. Thanks, gentlemen.